Malachy.
Good. What day? God, whatever we are anyway, Ellen.
It's lovely to see you. Thank goodness everybody is safe and well in this period, and that we have an opportunity to chat about something that's a happier occasion, which is the Irish Repertory Theatre Gala and the production of The Irish and How They Got That Way by your dear brother and my late husband, Frank McCourt.
How did that come about? That is the thing.
Well, you know how the Irish, and I think yourself and Frank in particular, are very interested in their own culture and history. And Frank was forever keeping little note cards, little file cards, 3x5 cards of incidents, of songs, of happenings throughout the 800 long years of Irish history. As he would say, the 800 years under the Saxon heel. Yeah. So he had a file box of all these snippets, and Charlotte Moore, the artistic director at the Irish Rep, had asked Frank if he wouldn't be interested in cobbling together a performance for the Irish Rep to use as a gala.
And he felt that he could cram 800 years of British occupation into a little theatre down on 22nd Street, the Irish Repertory Theatre.
In the first incarnation of the show, it was done in a rather larger Broadway theatre. And you might remember, because you and Frank and your brother Alfie were all participants. And those were the days when you and Frank used to do the raffle at intermission.
Yeah.
So that was about 1997. And, thanks to Charlotte Moore, not only for asking Frank to write this, but then she had the brilliant idea to expand it into a full-blown show. So Frank and I were in Germany at the time. This is just after Angela's Ashes had been published. That year, 1997, at the Frankfurt Book Fair, they were honoring Ireland. So we were in Germany, and Charlotte called and said, how do you feel about my creating a show out of the Irish and How They Got That Way? And Frank was only too delighted. So Charlotte added songs and narrative parts and music with the musical director Rusty McGee, and assembled a cast that many who are Irish Repertory Theatre followers and patrons will recognize. It was family working on this show. And I know that Frank rather loved school, or certainly liked parts of it.
I know Frank influenced me anyway, because I failed everything in school, the primary certificate and so forth. And so I was gone at 13. Frank was gone at 13. But we were both omnivorous readers.
Yes.
And the library came to Limerick, the Carnegie Library. It was like the gates of heaven had opened. We went to the library and we devoured everything. There was a tiny little library, but we thought it was such a great place. So it was love of reading.
I think the love of reading is what lodged all these facts and figures into Frank's head in order to write The Irish and How They Got That Way.
Among other things.
Yes, among other things.
We would stand outside because we only had candlelight and we were told not to waste the candle. We'd stand at the top of the lane where they had street lighting, reading on cold nights, getting in the last read before we had to go home and go to bed. He was a little guy, but he had a sense of justice that was quite amazing. He hated bullies, and he never hesitated to confront bullies.
And to come to your defense.
Yeah, and he did that all the time with any kids that were being bullied. Frank was right there to take care of them. So that was a lovely thing about him.
One of the things I love about Frank is his love of the digression. And I think also in The Irish and How They Got That Way, you'll find a lot of a lot of digression where one thing doesn't necessarily lead to the next.
Yeah. And he loved talking to the older people and the stories they told.
In the show, of course, you can't have an Irish show without a song like Danny Boy.
Yeah.
Now you've written a whole book about Danny Boy. Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about the origins of that song?
The melody is about 400 years old, and nobody knows for certain whether it is a Scottish melody or an Irish melody. It was the ultimate goodbye song, and it was published by Boosey and Hawkes in London in 1913. And the World War was breaking out, so it was the ultimate goodbye song. And it was like Danny Boy and It's a Long Way to Tipperary as well.
If you remember in the show, Ciaran Sheehan sings it beautifully.
Yes.
Don't you find it interesting that so many of the songs that we think of as Irish songs were really written by Tin Pan Alley tunesmiths?
Well, sure. Tura Laddie and Did Your Mother Come From Ireland? I'll Take You Home Again, Kathleen, because your father is bigger than me.
Yeah.
And,
and even Who Threw the Overalls in Mrs. Murphy's Chowder, which is in the show, is a song that Frank loved so much because he wanted to write a cookbook and give the recipe of Mrs. Murphy's Chowder and what kind of overalls should be in the soup. And it was actually quite a funny idea.
It is.
But Mother Machree, you and Frank used to sing Mother Machree all the time.
Those Irish tenors used to always clasp their "Oh, God bless you and keep you, Mother Machree."
Yeah.
We could never get that last note.
Yeah, or the Rose of Tralee. That used to be Frank's party piece.
I was at a thing with Frank once. He was a member of the Irish American Teachers. Frank and myself started messing about with some of those songs, and we were, as usual, amusing ourselves. And then in the process, we happened to amuse some teachers, and they gathered around. But Frank went on and on and on. His knowledge was just endless of trivia. I learned so much from him.
The show is full of little tidbits like that. The digging of the Erie Canal, the laying of the railroads across the country.
Yeah.
And of course, there is a big section on the Irish Famine. There are letters and there are songs associated with the famine, one of which, of course, was Alfie's favorite song, Skibbereen.
But Ellen, your own involvement or whatever it is, your life with Frank, you met him at the famous Lion's Head, I think. Is that correct?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, which was a big literary hangout here in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And there were the Pete Hamills and Jimmy Breslins and Joe Flaherty's and a whole lot of people.
And the Clancy brothers used to come in there and sit at the big round table in the back and sing.
And Ellen Fry came, and that was it. And there was a love affair erupted, and consequently a book called Angela's Ashes, due to Ellen Fry's encouragement, which has to be recorded, and it is recorded, but we might as well repeat it again. So there we are. All of a sudden, you get him to write a book, and what happened?
Well, I can't say that I got him to write a book. And you know that Frank had all these ideas percolating for so many years, and that he also honed many of his stories in the classroom. But I think if I did anything for Frank, it was maybe give him that safe space to actually write.
Yes.
He used to laugh about this, that when we first met, I had an apartment and I had a car. And he said, he said the chick got a coupe and wheels. So I think from the first night we met, which was in 1989, from the time we met, we pretty much saw each other every day after that, except that I went home to California for Christmas.
Yes.
But he picked me up at the airport at Kennedy, which, as you know, no New Yorker does, unless it's true love.
Yeah. I know that there were several parts of his life that how he survived, I do not know. The discouragements and disparagements and the put downs of people looking at him, he was a very, you would think he was a very retiring fellow, but you know better than anybody.
Oh, he was hilariously funny.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And had the most infectious laugh.
He did. Yeah.
I mean, he really, once he got going, the tears would stream down his face.
And he drew you right in.
Absolutely. And he was truly witty.
Yes.
He was an original thinker and an original wit. I really, really apprecited that. Sure. As many people did. I wasn't me alone.
Well, not too many people got it, You did. Right.
But speaking of the Lion's Head, again, I mean, this is coincidental. We were in Germany, and Frank got a call from the New York Times saying that the Lion's Head was closing. He was very sad to hear that. Yeah. And when we came back, there was a phone call on our answering machine from Mike Reardon, who was one of the last owners and bartenders from the Lion's Head. And Mike had said to Frank, "I wish you would come down to the Head." And Frank said, "Well, what for? It's closing." And Mike said, "No, come on down." He said, "We're going to be open for another couple of months." So Frank went down there and sat at the bar with Mike. As had been the tradition in this pub, the writers who frequented it, who had published books, had their book jackets mounted on the walls, and they were framed. And Frank was so envious of this. So he's sitting at the bar with Mike having a tot, and Mike points to behind Frank and he says, "Turn around." And Frank turned around, and there, mounted on the wall, the last jacket to go up was Angela's Ashes.
Yeah.
And Frank said it felt like he had won the Nobel Prize. So Malachy, as we both sit here in our COVID isolation, what do you think Frank would have thought about what's happening, with the pandemic, and then beyond the pandemic with the George Floyd protesting?
Those who are deprived would all have his sympathy. He had no time for racism or religionism.
Having grown up in extreme poverty, as you all did, I think Frank had always been very sympathetic to anyone who was in a situation that either belittled or shamed or put down. And I think he would be in sympathy with the protesters. I think as far as the COVID situation goes, that Frank would actually view it as an opportunity because he would be isolated. He wouldn't have to socialize. He could spend all his time reading and writing, which he loved. I think he would be delighted to see that the Irish, and how they got that way, has had an ongoing life. I mean, from its first production in 1997 to a revival in 2000 and another revival in 2010 at the Irish Repertory Theatre. I think he would be thrilled that such a thing could happen with this little show that came out of his interest in history and flotsam and jetsam.
Charlotte and Ciaran, they had more than sight, they had also a vision, which I think was one of the most important things. The grand thing about the Irish Repertory Theatre is the humanity between them. Charlotte and Ciaran, they know that a person writes because they have hopes and they have visions about what might happen to their work. Oh. And everybody has a right to dream about what might be, whether it's you write Ulysses or you write Macbeth. I mean, what is it? It's the same dream people have of that my word will inspire people, will make people smile, maybe bring a tear. Frank knew he had his hopes too, and he had his dreams, and he also knew that there would be those, the naysayers, years. And he wrote and wrote and wrote. And he never stopped. He was never discouraged, never let anybody put him down.
Mhm.
And away he went. And we know the
And
result
thank
of that.
God for that.
Yes, yes.
You know, the funny thing, my first association with the Irish Repertory Theatre was when Frank was going to appear in a production of Brian Friel's Philadelphia, Here I Come. Not surprisingly, he was acting the part of a teacher. The production was so successful that it kept getting extended. And Frank and I had planned to go to Ireland. I had never been to Ireland. So this was in 1990. And Frank had to ask for a leave of absence to go to Ireland with me for 2 weeks. And Charlotte and Ciaran, while not happy about it, did give Frank the 2 weeks off to go swan around Ireland with me. Everybody said, "Oh my God, you know, this will make or break your relationship." You know, once you've traveled with somebody, you know whether you can possibly live with them. And of course, we had a wonderful time. And Frank came back and went right back into the show and had a great time. And the other thing that Frank did during that show was he used to make the most marvelous mashed potatoes. And he would bring in his special mashed potatoes for the cast, and never revealing the secret ingredients of that mashed potato dish, but it was always licked clean with relish.
I would just say one of the words in the English language that is a good word, and it is hope. It would be good for us to just keep hope going. That it's a marvelous country, marvelous people. There is love, there is decency, and there are the opposites. But it's up to us, each of us, to just reach out to each other. We are alive, we have each other. There's love, there's art, there's fun, laughter, and all of that, and we've got it. And we will have the Irish Repertory Theatre for many, many years, and we have each other and our friendship. And I am delighted to be alive and to know you all. Thank you.
Everyone stay safe and
Yes.
be well.
Thanks.